Ninoy Aquino's Korean war-torn testimonies, war and media. What if I told you one of history's most iconic figures, known for his fight for freedom, once walked the bloody battlefields of the Korean War as a mere teenager? Before he became a senator, before his ultimate sacrifice, Ninoy Aquino faced bullets and bombs, sending back raw, shocking truths that few dared to speak. This is the untold, gripping story of a young man, a war, and the power of a pen. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Reporter. All right, prepare yourselves. We are about to dive into a chapter of history so astonishing, so untold, it feels like it's been ripped straight from a Hollywood script. Forget everything you think you know about Ninoy Aquino, the man who would one day become a beacon of Philippine democracy. Because before the iconic speeches, before the political battles, before the ultimate sacrifice, he was something else entirely. A teenage war correspondent in one of the 20th century's most brutal conflicts. Imagine this. It's the early 1950s. The world is still reeling from World War II, and suddenly a new terrifying conflict explodes on the Korean peninsula. American, UN, and Philippine forces are thrown into a meat grinder against communist North Korea and China. It was a war of unimaginable savagery, often fought in freezing conditions far from the public eye. And into this living nightmare, at the tender age of just 17 years old, stepped a young Filipino named Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. 17! Most teenagers today are worried about school dances or video games, but Ninoy, he was driven by an insatiable curiosity, a hunger for truth, and a daring spirit that would define his entire life. He convinced the editor of the Manila Times to send him to the front lines. Think about that for a second. A high school dropout, barely out of childhood, going to document a full-scale war? Did anyone truly grasp the danger? Did he? His mission wasn't to fight, but to report. To be the eyes and ears for a nation thousands of miles away, desperately trying to understand the fate of their sons and brothers, fighting in a land most couldn't even point to on a map. His journey to Korea was already an adventure, but nothing could prepare him for the sheer terror and chaos of the battlefront. When he finally arrived, the biting cold, the constant threat of enemy fire, the endless sound of distant shelling, it was a brutal awakening. This wasn't a game. This was survival. And Ninoy was about to throw himself right into the heart of it all. How did he survive? What did he witness that would forever change him? Chapter 2. Eyewitness to Hell. The Korean front was a landscape of frozen mud and shattered trees, a place where death was a constant, unwelcome companion. For a 17-year-old Ninoy, this wasn't just news. It was a brutal, terrifying reality. He wasn't reporting from a safe distance in some cozy press office. No, he was right there in the thick of it, sharing foxholes with Filipino soldiers, eating the same cold rations, and feeling the same gnawing fear that twisted in their stomachs. He ducked as bullets whizzed past his head. He felt the ground shake from artillery shells landing terrifyingly close. In his dispatches, he didn't just write about military strategy. He wrote about the human cost. He described the faces of young soldiers, barely older than himself, shivering more from fear than from the bone-chilling cold. He wrote about their letters from home, stained with dirt and tears, and their desperate hopes of seeing their families again. This wasn't just reporting. It was bearing witness to the raw soul of the soldier. One of his most famous dispatches had the headline, "First Cav Knifes Through 38th Parallel." It wasn't just a headline, it was a testament to the brutal reality of pushing back against the enemy, a story of unbelievable courage in the face of overwhelming odds. He wasn't just an observer, he was a participant in the story, even if his only weapon was a typewriter. He would later recall these moments as his first lessons in courage. Imagine the psychological weight on a teenager trying to process this level of trauma, to find the right words to describe the indescribable horror he was seeing every single day. This experience was a crucible, forging the boy into a man. Every explosion he survived, every wounded soldier he spoke to, every dispatch he painstakingly typed out and sent home chipped away at his youthful innocence and replaced it with a profound understanding of sacrifice, suffering, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. He saw firsthand that war wasn't about glory or grand strategies. It was about ordinary people caught in extraordinary, terrible circumstances. And this raw, unfiltered truth would become the foundation of everything he did next. Chapter 3. The Pen is Mightier. Back in the Philippines, thousands of miles from the freezing battlefields, something incredible was happening. The stories sent by this audacious young reporter, Ninoy Aquino, were landing like bombshells. His articles, printed in the Manila Times, weren't the dry, sanitized military reports people were used to. They were raw, they were emotional, and they were brutally honest. They had titles that grabbed you by the throat, stories that painted a vivid, often terrifying picture of the war. Aquino wasn't just a reporter. He became a vital link between the soldiers and their families. He told the stories of their bravery, their sacrifices, and their fears. He wrote about the Filipino soldiers of the 10th Battalion Combat Team who were gaining a fierce reputation on the battlefield. He made them heroes back home, giving names and faces to the anonymous soldiers fighting in a foreign land. Through his words, the war stopped being a distant headline and became a personal, deeply felt struggle for the entire nation. But here's where it gets controversial. Ninoy didn't just write about heroism. He wrote about the truth. He reported on the harsh realities, the strategic blunders, and the immense, almost unbearable suffering. He didn't shy away from the gritty, uncomfortable details that official reports often glossed over. This was scandalous for the time. A teenage reporter questioning the narrative and showing the true, unvarnished face of war. Some officials were likely unnerved. Was he revealing too much? Was he undermining morale? Or was he performing the most vital function of a free press, holding power to account even in wartime?
This experience cemented a core belief in Ninoy's mind: the power of information. The idea that a single, determined voice, armed with the truth, could shape public opinion, challenge authority, and bring about real change. He was learning, under the most extreme pressure imaginable, that the media wasn't just there to report the news, but to give it meaning, to provide context, and to speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. What Ninoy did was incredible, right? Using his voice to share these hidden truths. And that's what we try to do here: bring you these untold stories from history that deserve to be heard. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I do, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Also, let me know in the comments below, what do you think is the most important role of a journalist during a war? I'd love to read your thoughts. This trial-by-firing career wasn't just a brief, adventurous chapter in his life. It was the very foundation upon which the Ninoy Aquino the world would come to know was built. The lessons he learned in those frozen trenches would shape every single battle he would fight from then on, not with a rifle, but with his words and his unwavering convictions. Chapter 4. Beyond the Battlefield. When Ninoy Aquino finally returned home, he was no longer the boy who had left. He was only 18, but the things he had seen had aged him in ways years never could. The boyish enthusiasm was now tempered by a quiet, steely resolve. He had walked through the valley of the shadow of death and come out the other side, not broken, but forged. And the Philippines was ready to hail its new young hero. His dispatches had made him famous. He was the kid who went to war and told the truth. In recognition of his incredible bravery and service as a correspondent, President Elpidio Quirino awarded him the Philippine Legion of Honor. At 18 years old, he was the youngest person to ever receive this prestigious award. He was celebrated, he was admired, but deep down, Ninoy carried the invisible scars of the conflict. He carried the faces of the soldiers who never made it home. But this experience did more than just make him a famous journalist. It was the ultimate education. Being on the front lines gave him a crash course in leadership, geopolitics, and human nature. He had learned how to talk to generals and how to comfort terrified privates. He understood military strategy not from a textbook, but from seeing it unfold in the mud and snow. He understood the price of freedom because he had seen people pay for it with their lives. This wasn't a classroom, it was a crucible, and it prepared him for the even bigger battles that were waiting in his future. This journey into the heart of the Korean War fundamentally shaped his destiny. The courage it took for a teenager to voluntarily enter a war zone was the same courage he would later show when standing up to a powerful dictatorship. The conviction he developed for speaking truth to power, which first blossomed in his war dispatches, would become the defining principle of his political life. The battlefield taught him that some things are worth fighting for, and some things are worth dying for. He just didn't know yet that his own fight was just beginning. Chapter 5: A Legacy Forged in Fire. Everything Ninoy Aquino would ever become, every fight he would lead, every risk he would take, can be traced back to those frozen battlefields in Korea. The young man who learned about courage by huddling in a foxhole became the senator who fearlessly exposed the corruption of a powerful regime. The teenage reporter who fought to tell the uncensored truth of war became the political prisoner who refused to be silenced by a dictator. His entire life became a battlefield, and his weapon of choice remained the same: the truth. Think about it. His final, fateful decision to return to the Philippines in 1983, knowing the immense danger that awaited him, was the ultimate act of a war correspondent. He was returning to the front line one last time. He believed that his sacrifice, his presence, could be the story that would finally awaken his people and expose the truth of the dictatorship to the world. He had learned in Korea that some stories have to be witnessed, no matter the cost. And tragically, he was right. His assassination was the spark that ignited a revolution. The legacy of Ninoy Aquino isn't just about his political struggle or his ultimate sacrifice. It's a timeless lesson on the power of a single courageous voice. It's a testament to the vital role of a free and fearless press in holding power accountable. In an age of misinformation and fake news, his story screams at us from the past, reminding us that seeking and speaking the truth is one of the most heroic acts a person can undertake. From the bloody ridges of Korea to the tarmac in Manila, his life was one continuous dispatch about freedom, courage, and the undying hope for a better world. The boy who went to war never truly left it behind. He simply changed his battlefield. And in the end, his words, his ideals, and his sacrifice won a victory that resonated across the globe, proving that a legacy forged in the fires of war can inspire peace for generations to come. The story of Ninoy's youth is a powerful reminder that heroes are not born, they are forged in the fires of experience. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story moved or inspired you, please help us share more like it by hitting that like button and making sure you've subscribed to the channel. And for our final question, what part of Ninoy's story will stick with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching and for helping us keep history alive. Thank you so much also for subscribing, liking, and commenting to our video. God bless us all.